I do have a rumor from my head. Most of my rumors from my head, they're forward-looking, they're prescient. I have a psychic's grasp on the future, but in this case, I'm looking backwards, which I don't do all the time, but it's fun to do it. And in this case, I wrote a little piece about Dennis Rodman, and people often say Dennis Rodman didn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame because he was a non-factor on offense and he hurt an offense. I'm going to say that Dennis Rodman didn't hurt the offenses he was a part of because he didn't participate in them. And because on offense, it's often reliant on one or two players doing something, as Henry Abbott elucidated in a post. It's different from defense where you need everybody to have a collective action. It's possible to just be a non-participant and stand idly by and not hurt your offense, and maybe even help an offense because you're helping everybody else define their roles and you're not stepping on their usage rate and you're making them feel more confident with the more shots that they're taking. So looking back in time, I think that Dennis Rodman did not hurt the offenses he was a part of.
I'm going to completely agree with that prescient rumor from your head. I was watching the 1988 finals.
It's the opposite of prescient, Zach.
The 1988 finals on NBA TV, and they were actually running post-up plays for Rodman. They were, I think his second year he averaged like 11 points a game, which isn't exactly, making Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sweat at all, but it's still pretty solid number for a guy who allegedly can't score. He scored in college, but he put up 20 and probably 30 rebounds a game in college. He had a lot of skill and he was good moving to the basket. I actually think he was a pretty decent passer for how much they used him. He made some plays and he got offensive rebounds. That is really helping your offense when you get offensive rebounds and keeping the possessions alive.
Yeah, I think that it's possible. I think within like the actual gameplay, no one would ever argue that Dennis Rodman didn't make the team better, or I wouldn't argue it anyway. Someone stupider than me probably would. But I think the issue at hand is like if Rodman isn't in a situation where he can take the back seat in the offense. He's played with some really great teams in Detroit, in San Antonio, and in Chicago, and of course he was a part of those. But he was also surrounded by really strong personalities who kind of held the team together. And I think that it's strange for a Hall of Fame player like him to have to be governed by, I don't know if that's fair to say, but be governed by like other players on his team's personalities with that. Otherwise, he could self-destruct or hurt the team just by him not being at his best. So I agree with you, Ethan, that he was a positive offensive force, but I think that it's a complicated thing that, it's something we'll probably never have a metric that measures how weird it was to play with Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, I don't think that we'll have that metric, and I have another theory, which is that it was easier to help your team as a non-scorer back then in the 90s than it is today. Because back then with the illegal defense rules, isolation offense, that was king. And when you look at the best guys in PER and offensive production, top 5 guys, it was mostly back to the basket post scorers because you could just dump the ball into one dude. They'd throw a double team from a predictive spot, and it was just a very predictable avenue to pass the ball back, and you weren't getting swamped and swarmed like you are today. So I think that Rodman's lack of contributions mattered less because guys like Michael Jordan and David Robinson were doing all the work back then.